It gives me a great pleasure to actually be part of this fourth edition of 2024 Limpopo Investment Conference. And I'd like to thank our partners from Aon, LEADER, its board as well as its members for affording us the opportunity to facilitate this important discussion on infrastructure, logistics, investment and opportunities. I'm gonna cut to the chase to ensure that we maximize on the time. Usually people say, I'm standing in the way to lunch, but I want you to turn that and say, you will actually miss an opportunity if you are not here. Minister Tau spoke around the world-class infrastructure. It is true that the focus of our panel today is really around ways as well as unpacking what is important. I think the important factor around infrastructure development is the fact that it is at the heart of all economic transformation. Previous speakers have spoke to roads, infrastructure, bridges, railways, power grids, water systems, telecoms, special economic zones. And these all lay a groundwork for efficient markets, accessibility as well as productivity. And it is these developments that support the expansion of critical industry sector. Dr. Posa went in detail to speak around the importance of agriculture, which has also been substantiated with subsequent speakers. And for importance in terms of agriculture in Limpopo, manufacturing, tourism, as well as green energy, they form a base of that. Distinguished guests, it is this role in facilitating trade and investment by sourcing and facilitating funding for investment projects in this province, as well as supporting business expansion and retention, supporting and driving enterprise development and attracting new industry that bring us together today. This is key, as I said, to sustainable economic and industry sector growth in Limpopo. I have to say that I will be amiss and not represent if I don't talk around the important part around de-risking infrastructure. As an insurer, de-risking infrastructure development for investment is very essential, not only for sustainability and profitability of the individual projects, but also for the critically needed industry sector expansions, industrializations of the province, as well, which in addition to government support, requires mobilization of both private sector investment, including foreign direct investment. This brings me to the focus of the discussion this afternoon, and I've got my esteemed panelists joining us, and thank you, Minister, for actually joining this panel as we take through. This team has been given an important task in unpacking the opportunities that lie in driving this economic growth for Limpopo, given the economic state of the province. I'm going to start to my left. I've got Mr. Mashwe Matsia. He is the regional manager from IDC. Minister Tau is here. I've got Mr. Jan Louis Spolstra, who's the director at Fly Swans, followed by Dr. Misaveni Ngobeni from Infrastructure Fund, as well as Ms. Vivian Ramatuba, New Development Bank, a senior professional there, Mr. Lwazimboyi, who is with Cross Border Road Transport Agency as the CEO, and Mr. Tang Yingshu, who is from the China State Construction Company. I'm going to start with the first question. I think it's very important to understand to Mr. Meshwa. As a key player in supporting industry growth, how does the IDC envision its role in enhancing regional connectivity in Limpopo? I think more particularly, what specific infrastructure projects or initiatives do you consider vital for fostering sustainable economic development in the province?
Thank you very much indeed, and good afternoon. Good afternoon. Let me acknowledge the Premier of the province, the mayors present here, the MECs, and all the dignitaries. Thank you very much. We, as the Industrial Development Corporation, the IDC, so to say, see ourselves playing a very critical role in terms of, connecting the regional economies. And this we do in various ways. Of course, our main instrument is that we provide funding. And let me say this up front. IDC is the biggest development funding institution in the country and in Africa that provides businesses. And maybe can use that one.
Do you want to
Can
start?
you? There you go.
Yeah. So when I speak this big funding, Minister, the mics go off. Of course, we as the Industrial Development Corporation, we fund from 1 million per project up to 1 billion. 1 billion per project and more. So it depends on the economic merit of a project. So we can go anywhere above 1 billion and more, depending on the nature of the project. In terms of our connectivity of the regional economies, our infrastructure funding cuts across the sectors. You know, for example, if you fund the water infrastructure, which we do as the IDC, that will support, for example, mining, agriculture, and of course tourism also needs water, and other industries. Maybe if I can just cite examples, amongst others, we are currently looking at an initiative for the rehabilitation and efficient running of the border post, the 6 in the country, one of which is Beit Bridge up here. So that is very important to us because we believe that will ease the movement of goods and services into and out of the country. All these good things that were said, without the efficient infrastructure, they will not be able to reach their destination quickly and in good shape. We are also looking at a project on fiber and data center infrastructure, working with LEADER, and that project is aiming to connect towns and government departments and communities, which we believe really it will empower the communities to access this type of information. As we are speaking here, people are listening to us across the country, across the world, but it's important that the people on the ground, our people, also get access to this kind of information and help us to implement this important project. And lastly, on this aspect, other opportunity also lie in rail projects, which include the refurbishment of sidings, you know, just to connect the roads to the rail, so that these goods and services can move freely within the country and also out of the country into the export markets. Specific, quickly, if I may say, specific initiatives that we're looking at. Up north there's coking coal, which is in abundance, which we believe if we can tap into that through our funding, we can then make the steel price or the production of steel to be more cheaper, because at the moment we are importing most of this very important ingredient which we have here in Limpopo, and that's what we are very, very interested in. We spoke of the potato belt up in Blowback. We really looking at opportunities there to see what value-added products can we bring about and also expand that space, because it's a very, very niche opportunity. The Ebenezer Water Scheme, water cuts across all sectors, as I've said earlier. It's also providing funding opportunities for us, which we believe we can participate. And lastly, the SEZs, which were spoken about here, the SEZ of Musina Makado and Feta Komutubazi, we are very much involved there, working with our colleagues on the ground. And there we believe infrastructure-wise we can provide funding for water projects, road infrastructure, rail network, energy importantly as well. And we are all geared and for that with our funding and the specialist skills that we have within the organization. And we're calling upon the industry players to really collaborate, and that word has been used. I also subscribe to it. But collaboration is something. Let's cut the red tape and make ourselves vulnerable. Like a child learning the language, let's make mistakes, but not intentionally to make mistake as we solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Msheru. I think there's a number of initiatives that you've highlighted, and I'd like to transition back to Jan. One of those is actually the rail development. Jan, maybe you can tell us in terms of particularly what role does logistics, in particular referring to rail, play in making agriculture more effective and sustainable? And I think please talk to around enabling. I think Mr. Msheru spoke around enabling goods to move efficiently across the borders.
Yeah, if I can start, just check, the mic is on.
It is on.
Yeah. So if you look at what's happening in the agricultural space, the prediction is, and we didn't get it totally this morning from the previous slide, but the prediction is that the total exportable product of citrus will increase out of Limpopo by a total value of about 35 to 40% over the next 7 years. Avocado exports will double. And I'm asking the people, just go and drive through Magubas Kloof, just go and drive in Letsetele, just go and have a look at all the young trees that you will see that's not yet in production. Now, what is very important is that the market that purchases agricultural products, they export from us, they require us to reduce our carbon footprint on that and to reduce the cost, to reduce food waste. More and more of the fruit that is harvested must reach the market in Europe or in China or in Japan at the best quality. If the fruit doesn't arrive at quality, it gets destroyed in the port of Rotterdam or in the receiving port. And for that, we need to build resilient cold chain transportation. And we can only do that with rail. So we need to increase the rail capability, linking the agricultural heartland of Limpopo and after that also other parts in the country with the different ports to say that we harvest the fruit, we do the cold sterilization right up in the Limpopo province. And then from there, load it on trains, keep it cold, get it into the ports as efficiently as possible. Perhaps just added to that, the President and the Cabinet in March 2022 signed off on the new rail policy, the white paper on rail reform. And this introduced the biggest transformation in the rail sector for 110 years. And this is now being implemented. The President made some announcements last week, Monday, in his letter to the nation, where he actually said that by the end of November, so if you talk about KPIs, Premier, this is now for the colleague of Minister Tau, and this is for Minister Creasy. By the end of November, she needs to announce the rules on which the private sector will access the rail network in this country and at what price. And I know for a fact it's very close to being done. The document is nearly complete and it will reach her desk tomorrow. You know, just on what is the conditions and what is the pricing. Now, this will mean also that the second part of the rail policy will come into being, and that's where the investments in sidings, but also the potential extensions come in. You know, if you look at not just agriculture, but think about the mining commodities, we failed as a country, and as Transnet failed to invest in extending capacity into Lephalale. Because of that, we failed to expand the coal mining industry in the Waterberg. What is happening now is that this can become available as a PSP, a private sector-led initiative that will be looking at the IDC and other entities for funding. But the investment then also in train companies, in rolling stock, train operating companies for the agricultural space, but also for the mining industry from Limpopo can unleash huge amounts of investments. My estimation is that just connected to Limpopo, that this can be 30 to 40 billion. Our own foundation in the agricultural space where we are active in is ready to announce the first investment of $500 million into Tsanin. And this is the first of many that will come, but based on this model where we need liberalization on the rail and then actually running the fruit through to the ports. So I think in short, let me stop there to give other people opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spoelstra. I think what's critical, I mean, if both of you have highlighted key projects and initiatives that are underway and that could be done. I'll hand over to Ms. Ramatuba to actually understand, as the regional manager responsible for BRICS Bank, how does the bank seize its role in financing some of these large infrastructure projects in Limpopo?
Good afternoon, and all protocol observed. And I think as the New Development Bank, or also known as the BRICS Bank, our focus is to align with government policies, government objectives. So we fund infrastructure projects that has already been taken through the policies, and we are happy to support those projects. Our main focus area, of course, is on the energy side, on the transport and water. We're also quite happy to do the social infrastructure. In Limpopo, we are supporting government on the Limpopo Academic Hospital. And we also look forward to fund other social infrastructure projects. On our side, I think we've been in existence for the past 8 years. And in South Africa, to date, we've done $6.3 billion US. And every year, we continuously get an allocation to do at least $1.5 billion. As you understand, those are big numbers. So therefore, we rely on this room where we have to partner with the province, the private sector, so that we can be able to do projects. I think on our side, funding is not an issue. The issue is projects that are available. And it goes back to what is our role. Our role, other than just doing funding, we've added other products where we are coming in, and we're going to partner with the province where we can do project early stage preparation. And this will allow us to provide TA grants, technical assistant grants, where we can partner and develop projects and take them to bankability. We not only fund the sovereign or work with the National Treasury, we also do private sector where we can do triple Ps and project finance, and that's where we can also partner with some of the projects that have been mentioned here in this room. The airport in Polokwane, these falls within our mandate of logistics, and we are quite interested where we can be able to partner and offer that technical assistance, partner with other MDBs or development finance to take these projects to bankability so that they can be funded. I think it's quite critical upfront that as you develop projects, we come in early, and upfront we can be able to advise as to, or even mention whether these projects will be bankable or not. And I think it goes back to infrastructure projects. Everybody knows the list. It's all about whether the project can come into bankability, and it's partnering with all various stakeholders like funders to ensure that the project is de-risked. Upfront, as a funder, we want to know that the project will be completed, the project will be fully funded, and all those things. We are not apologetic about it. And those are the main things that make some of these infrastructure projects not come to fruition. So on our side as the NDB, we are quite happy to partner with you. We do have funding. This year in August, we did $1 billion project for our water infrastructure, where we are working with various municipality, there are various municipalities in Limpopo that will benefit from that project where we are working with them. And other than that, we not only just provide funding, we work with you and implement the project to ensure that we count each and every cent and count the developmental impact that we would have upfront announced to say, this is the developmental impact of this project. And I think that is our role as the NDB. We do have interest to do more, and we are willing to partner with each and every one of you, whether private, whether sovereign, to ensure that we assist you in delivering your projects. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I guess just a follow on to that, Dr. Ngobeni, I think, is there room for blended finance solution to catalyze the investment around infrastructure?
Yeah, thanks, Program Director or the Chair of the panel. Let me start by saying kgotso ya Modimo e be le batho. I won't do the salutations because of time, but protocols observed. What I want to say, though, Premier, is that I'm from the Infrastructure Fund, which is a national blended finance platform that has been established by the President of the Republic in 2020. We are currently incubated within the DBSA through we're a creature of a memorandum of agreement between ISA, or Infrastructure South Africa, National Treasury, as well as the DBSA. We are a 100 billion platform. We use blended finance to invest in large-scale infrastructure projects. Blended finance refers to a combination of grant funding from government, also concessional loan facilities from government, but crowding in capital from the private sector. Since inception in 2020, we have had about 20 projects already approved of the 100 billion. They make up around 50 billion. So we still have headroom for 50 billion to be tapped into. And Premier, of the 20 projects that I'm talking about, 5 are already in Limpopo. Mostly water and sanitation projects, the Olifants River Water Resource Development Project, where we are using a combination of grants as well as concessional loan facilities. Concessional loan means that the terms are not similar to the terms that you get in the market. So what they do, they de-risk the project. They also lower the tariff rates in the project area so that the residents of the areas can afford them. So the Olifants one that I'm talking about, for example, is in this Kukuni district. While there's a big mining community there, there's also a huge social component. Therefore, your structuring needs to talk to that. And the role of the infrastructure fund is in that. We are also participating in the ports of entry. Actually, we are coordinating various funders to be able to get value for money for government. SARS is already investing money to clear the trucks up front before they line up at the Bait Bridge so that they can move quickly. We also did a cost-benefit analysis study of that project. It shows that the economic net present value is about 60 billion. And it's actually for all ports of entry in the country. But when you distill it and check where are the biggest spin-offs, they are in the Bait Bridge one. And it's about 40 billion of that. So it shows you the heavyweight nature of Limpopo in facilitating regional mobility around goods and services, as well as the interlinking with the regional economies. So basically, we are open for business as well, and we want to work together with various project sponsors within the province to be able to use these blended finance instruments going forward. And lastly, our clients are organs of state across the 3 spheres of government: national, provincial, and local, and they can be departments, municipalities, as well as their entities. And I hope that Program Director, we can have an opportunity to share our full value-add presentation so that potential clients can also approach us so that we can invest in the projects. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think the last point you highlighted is around the cross-border. I think, Mr. Mboyi, that's a clue to your question around what specific infrastructure investment needs have been identified across the continent that you deem crucial for economic development in Limpopo.
Thank you very much. I think I'm standing on existing protocol. Maybe let me just, I think, within half a minute, make the case for Limpopo just to build on the last point. So, South African ports have been the largest ports in the region for the longest of times. And therefore, the bulk of the goods that move from the Durban ports and other ports are destined for the rest of the region. And therefore, South Africa still becomes one of the key sectors, one of the key countries in the region to move trade into the rest of the region. So as we always say, we're in the nexus of transportation and trade, and we are about ensuring that trade moves as fast as possible. So again, to support the point that has just been made, out of that bulk of trade that moves into the region, I think if we looked at the year 2022, it was over 300 billion rands worth of trade. The biggest number came through Limpopo into the rest of the region. So Limpopo becomes one of the key provinces for South Africa to move trade into the rest of the region. And that happens through two key border posts. One is Beitbridge, and the next one is Groblersbridge. But if you look at the numbers now of late, so Beitbridge has dropped in terms of freight transportation, overtaken by Libombo. Again, influence of Limpopo because building on the point that the Premier made in the morning and other people, the bulk of the ore that comes from Limpopo no longer goes to Richards Bay Port, it goes to the Maputo Port. So there's been a huge volume of trucks that has increased into the port of Mozambique. So Libombo becomes number one in terms of freight volumes now, in terms of freight revenue for the country. But the second port that has grown significantly, and I'm glad the Premier is in the room, is the Groblersbridge port. With all the infrastructure problems there, it is now the second, if you look at SARS numbers, it is now the second largest in terms of freight volumes going through. And that is caused by two things. One is the fact that if you look at the north, the Kazungula Bridge has been opened, which is providing connectivity and a one-stop border post amongst various countries, and therefore it makes freight to move easier into the north. And therefore, it has created a lot of freight movements from Beitbridge to Groblersbridge. But we have one serious crisis there, and we've been there with LEADER. We have an old bridge, Minister, there, which is a single-lane bridge, which is really having serious problems. We've been there with Transport and Sanral, and therefore, for freight to move across, it's one truck at a time. You don't have two trucks coming across, but we have submitted reports to government about that. But I think for the Limpopo government, it's important to understand that this is one of the major hotspots into the north. So if you look at the question that you've asked, one of the critical things, of course, is the one-stop border posts that are being built and that we are facilitating across the various parts of the region. And of course, if you look at Namibia and Botswana, that some of those one-stop border posts have been built. The gentleman from the IDC spoke about the facilitation of the 6 that have been identified in South Africa. Unfortunately, work has not started, but our neighboring countries have overtaken us. If you look at Beitbridge across Zimbabwe has finished the construction of its own facility. If you look at Botswana across, again, they've finished the construction of some of their border posts. And therefore, South Africa, we really need to move the pace in terms of building the infrastructure to access to access the rest of the region. The next set of infrastructure quickly is to say, is the one that is looking at facilities. Everyone, even the minister, was talking about declogging the borders and moving freight away from the border so that priority products like your perishables can move across. You'd remember that when we attended the conference here last year, we agreed and signed with the MMSEZ to build a truck stop in Limpopo as being one of the biggest provinces. And I think we're now, as the CPRTA, we're now at the proof of concept stage. But what that means is that we are working towards putting up a truck stop to move all the freight away from the border, to make sure that people go into a particular truck stop and we put systems that will coordinate the movement of trucks to the border so that, one, those that have been pre-accredited by SARS can move with speed and are pre-accredited by ourselves without interference, and two, those that are carrying perishable goods can also move across as quickly as possible. So we need to really expedite the building of that infrastructure. There are other areas of infrastructure that we are also looking at, the areas around the SEZs. The Honorable Minister, the Premier, and everybody else has spoken about that, and that is what we are supporting at this point in time. And the rest of the region is moving in this direction. So if you look at, for instance, the Trans-Kalahari Corridor, South Africa, Namibia, and Botswana, there's work being done in that space. The North-South Corridor, Zimbabwe up to the north, these are some of the infrastructure processes that we are looking at, but it is critical for our government, I think, to understand that the dynamic is that we are still, at this point in time, hopefully we don't lose it in the future, the largest in terms of receiving freight and transporting it into the rest of the region, and therefore our infrastructure must respond to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mbui. Okay. Mr. Yangchu, I'm going to cut the questions just specifically to understand. Which areas does the China State Construction focuses on in supporting infrastructure development within Limpopo?
Okay. Okay, thank you your question. I think before the answer your question, I use a short time to introduce my holding company. You know, I am a foreigner man, not an African man. The English is not my mother language.
That's fine.
So I would to say hard use the English. Please support me. Thank you. My holding company is China State Construction Engineer Group. It is a state-owned company in China and the country's biggest construction and investment group. China State Construction mainly focuses on real estate, infrastructure projects, and a few range of other construction services. In 2023, I think somebody didn't know my holding company CSCEC. In 2023, our contracts were worth an estimated value of $500 billion US, and our revenue around $300 billion US. In 2023, our company CSCEC was ranked 13 in the Fortune Global list. Thank you. This is my holding company. And now my companies in the South Africa have two big project, government project. One is N2, one is N3, the interchange. That project's name is EB Cloud Interchange, and another one is Ashburton N3 Highway Upgrade. That value about $415 million US. Both the South Africa National Roads Agency, CIRO, and the Department of the Transport have completed our progress on my projects. We are proud that 99% material and labor come from South Africa, and we have value our strong relationships with local community. Now I have to have a Luban College. What is the Luban College? That is growing South Africa construction industry and create more jobs. To train subcontractors and secure workers. That college is doing.
Thank you.
And you know, in the September at the recent China-Africa's Business Forum. We meet the Premier in Beijing. President Xi Jinping announced a commitment of 50 billion US dollars investment and loans for Africa. You know, my company is owned from the China. We can help and we hope to push the much more money in South Africa, in Limpopo. This is my want to see. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I answer your question.
Yeah.
Thank
Because
you.
my English is poor, so my colleague to translate.
Thank you, Mr. Yang Chu. I think I am mindful that we are right at the
Okay,
time.
my quickly. Okay,
We are right on time to
finish.
release the teams here. I think what you've actually all shared constructively is around the opportunities for investment, also understanding in terms of initiatives within your respective areas.
Yeah.
What is important, what the Honorable Premier said, that it is time to invest in Limpopo, money is in the room. And I certainly hope you got a sense around of the opportunities that are there, how you can leverage those opportunities. The one part, unfortunately, due to time, we can't cover is around how do we go around the partnerships through the entities that are available and what is there. I want to thank the panelists and the members for their participation, and thank you, Minister, for the prelude, which actually created a good sense around the context that we need to have. I do want to assure all the distinguished guests that these experts are available to expand further on the issues that have been actually tabled here. So, Honorable Premier, I certainly do hope that you're getting some level of confidence around tangible initiatives as well as avenues that can be explored to help accelerate the implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. 结束了。
Yeah?
Okay. Finish.
Somebody keep switching my mic off. Thank you very much, Dr. Mgokri, and thanks to Aon as well for supporting this conference. I'm sure that you'll still be part of the discussions and adding value to this great province and this wonderful initiative. And thanks for all panel members and their participation and contribution to this. We're under extreme time pressure, so we apologize for rushing you. We are breaking for lunch now, and I pray that we will be back here by 2:45, 14:45. So lunch, where is Matsubani and other protocol officers? Yeah, please, this lady standing here will direct us as to where we should go. But lunch is going to be served at the restaurant and the Lapa. But maybe just seek guidance there. But while everybody's going there for lunch, may I please see the following people? Dr. Paulina Mamurubo and Nomasonto Ndlovu. They are the panel discussion facilitators for the after lunch. So we want to have a little caucus for this branch called the Ranch Branch of Trade and Investment and Competition. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Premier. Lunch is served. This lady will tell us where to go. Please, let's be back here by 14:45. There's a big party in the evening, so
Economic activity is concentrated like Western
it's
Cape
scarce.
and KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng.
Hearing
But
voices.
Limpopo has its own competitive advantages. It has its own offerings. And with the appropriate investment will actually play a critical role in facilitating growth in South Africa. Busa has been very, very clear.
For centuries, the vast landscape of Limpopo has thrived under the watchful eye of the various kings, queens, and kingdoms, whose reigns have been the pathway of its people to this day. Limpopo has 5 diverse
This province is endowed with mineral resources. Investors come in and tap into what we have in various minerals in this province.
We believe that Limpopo province is an important province for our country. It has significant potential in areas like mining, tourism, agriculture, and in other sectors that are beginning to emerge in the province.
Networth, we are a property developing company, and that's our core business. We get raw land and we enrich the land, make the land ready for developers to come and invest, for investors either here local or outside to come and invest.
We focus on a multitude of different developments. It ranges from residential to commercial to industrial, retail and institutional land development. You've got job creation during construction and then the permanent jobs created after that. As Networth, we pride ourselves in supporting our local contractors, our local suppliers and local labour.
PMC is a mining company, in fact the largest producer of primary copper in South Africa. It's a fully integrated mine. When it comes to copper, PMC was basically satisfying the South African market.
A few months from now, we'll have our copper smelter restarted, a brand new copper smelter which we built with over a billion rand.
All right, thank you very much. We're in business now.
Copper or processing or smelting.
Thank you, audiovisual. We are back in business live. We are back from lunch. I hope you enjoyed it. We are in the home stretch now. We have 2 panels to go. 2 panels. Hang in there. And please, don't be that parent at a school function who waits until their children have performed, and once they do their swimming or whatever it is, they walk out and leave the last child to perform to an empty hall. All right. So Ntondlovu has done many bad things in her life, but she hasn't earned enough punishment to be addressing an empty hall, please. So stick around after this panel so that she can have an audience. The next panel is infrastructure and Yes, it's the wine that I'm going to have in the evening. Is the automotive investment opportunities in automotive industry. It will be started with a presentation, 50% off, by Mr. Teku Tsetle, who's the NAMSA, National Association of Automobile Manufacturers of South Africa, Chief Policy Officer. You know those guys who tell us petrol is going to go up? Those guys. And the facilitator will be Dr. Paulina Mamugobo, who's also with the National Automotive Association of South Africa. I suppose we can throw them all under the bus, but you have until 15:45, please. I won't be controlling his time. You will. Is that cool? Fit a track onto him. And you can switch him off when you no longer want to hear. A round of applause for.
Good afternoon. I'll wait for my presentation to come through. I have limited my presentation to just one slide. Thank you. By the way, the pause is taking another second out of my 3-minute presentation. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, great one. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol observed. Premier and all MECs, members of parliament. My name is Tsetledi Teku and I represent the automotive industry. What I've tried to do is to just highlight in this one slide what investment in auto means and the importance and significance of this automotive industry that we have in South Africa, and how we tap into this automotive industry in order for us to create value for the economy. So to help me go through it quickly, I'm going to use the analogy of the premier from this morning around value addition and how value addition adds to the industrial process. So if you look at the slides, moving from left to right on the top, that's the value addition map. So we start with raw materials, and then from there we go into processing those materials into components. And then after doing that, we go and assemble a car. After assembling a car, we sell a car. And in the aftermarket, the car itself presents more opportunities because we now need to service that vehicle, or we need to create components for that vehicle after. So it requires that we have industrial activity. And at the end, there's vehicle use, which is what happens when we use the car and so forth. So a car, because of this, means that South Africa, with just 7 OEMs that manufacture cars, means that we have a country with, just from these 7, a country that has 35% of all value addition in our industrial space, focused on auto. So auto is able to sustain about 500,000 jobs just from those 7 OEMs with a 5.3% GDP contribution. And it has to do with the fact that value addition is a big part of it. Now, historically, all the cars that we've made as a country were internal combustion engines, famously known as ICE. But now we are also migrating into new energy vehicles, which includes hybrid, which includes fuel cell vehicles, which includes battery electric vehicles. So on the left, if you check, there's a bunch of minerals that are on top. Historically, those minerals, we've seen them as sort of sunset minerals as far as auto was concerned, because there was an assumption that auto will move into these zero emissions vehicles and we will forget about internal combustion engines. However, these minerals are finding a second life in this auto value chain. And you'll see on top, we've got PGMs, which are platinum group of metals, which you have a whole lot of resources for them. But let me just give you a picture, and then from there, these are the first 3 opportunities that I want you to consider as a province. When Russia attacked Ukraine, that geopolitical instability meant that the primary source of wire harnessing into the continent of Africa, that value chain got disturbed. And Africa had to figure out a way to get harnessing into our vehicles. What do I mean? All the copper that we have in our vehicles moves from the engine. After that, you know how an engine works. After the top creates that electricity. All the wiring that leaves from the engine and lights your car. All that wiring. As soon as Ukraine was attacked, we stopped getting a dependable success from that region. And a company called Hesto, for instance, which was based there, they are now in Devon with about 2,000 jobs that they've created because of replacing Ukraine. Another one is China moved aggressively into production of BEVs, but up until recently they said, maybe we moved too fast. There are countries that have not developed infrastructure yet. Maybe hybrid technologies where we need to look. That affects our copper and that copper conversation. So that group of metals are now becoming very popular group of metals. And one of the few things that now needs to be considered by us as a group is, if platinum is reinventing itself for purposes of hybrid application, I wish you knew these technologies, by the way, but let me just, because I've got 3 more minutes. We need, as a province, to firmly solidify a mineral strategy that considers what processing those minerals means. For instance, we are a copper producer in this particular province, but 34% of consumption of copper in SA goes into our cars. all of that copper is imported. But you've got a copper operation in the province. But for that copper to produce harnessing, they need to have put a layer of value addition. So we need to look into how they process, and that furnace and that processing mechanism requires investment. But if we figure out that investment process, that particular industry overnight employs 2,000 people. And it's a technology that Auto can buy from, and it's a potential for the province. Now, the race on that particular copper investment is such that Northern Cape has introduced themselves into that conversation. Botswana has introduced themselves into that conversation. Zambia has introduced themselves into that conversation. But it's genuinely a South African conversation. South Africa buys copper to put into vehicles so that our vehicles can receive electricity from your drivetrain, and then you are able to get a car to move. And what's even worse is that once our cars go electric, their demand for copper more than 500% increases. And so it's a mineral of the future, if you ask me. And it's a mineral that you have in incredible supply in your province. Similarly with hybrids, if we continue to make hybrids and hybrid production reaches the skills that they've reached this year, the catalytic converter, which where your platinum has been used historically, becomes a big factor. In that whole inter-Africa movement where we're talking about how trucks are moving, if we're going to green road transport with trucks, another technology that exists there is called fuel cell technology, which uses hydrogen to fuel a vehicle. And that fuel cell technology needs PGMs as well for it to grow. Now, what's even exciting about that particular technology of fuel cells is that no one is taking a lead. South Africa is one of the few countries in the world that have experimented with hydrogen vehicles to see if they would be feasible. But if South Africa wants to advance and have a technology in vehicle technology that they're going to dominate the market, it's fuel cell vehicles for heavy duty trucks. And what's even interesting about that is that it brings PGMs and the demand for PGMs into vehicle production. And again, it's a viable technology to look into. Now, if we follow another thing is that our value chain as it develops with new energy vehicles, now we need a new type of petrol station where cars can charge. And we're talking about having zero emission charging in our streets or having charging infrastructure on our roads. It's an incredible opportunity that arises from there. But let me leave you with this one as an opportunity, and then from there I'll sit. Today in Botswana, they say for every 1,000 people, 268 people own vehicles, which is around 600,000 cars. And for South Africa, we've got about 188 cars owned per 1,000 people. And the reason why Botswana has got such a huge ownership of vehicles is that vehicles in Botswana are second-hand imports. And once that vehicle is broken, they don't have enough infrastructure for someone to produce components to fix those vehicles. So what we do is that we leave that vehicle, we buy another one, because second-hand imports are quite cheap. But what that means is that even within that aftermarket space, what we do have as a regional concern is a need for someone to start to produce components for the aftermarket. The same is true for South Africa. Once we start producing electric vehicles and the production of electric vehicles goes beyond that of internal combustion engines, someone needs to start producing components for the aftermarket, for cars that are already on the roads that no one is producing components for. And that's a huge economy that no one has taken ownership of, and one that remains available for the province. And finally, another one that I need to also bring light to is everyone in our region buys their cars second-hand, as second-hand imports from China, from Japan mostly, and Singapore. Now, can this region play a role in making new cars available for those markets? And the answer will surprise you, yes. And again, huge potential for this province in making sure that we produce cars, or we assemble and reassemble cars in this region for purposes of feeding new cars into adjacent countries. So this value chain has got so much value, it's undertapped. I think that most people think it's overvalued, but I think it's undervalued. And the potential for regional economic development are amazing. And I think it's something that we now need to take time to study, analyze, and figure out how we shape policy to make it work for any province in the country, including your own. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Diteko. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If I can also kindly stand on the protocols that have been observed And thank you so much for such an insightful presentation and an opening, which has set context into the conversation that we're going to have. So one thing that we pride ourselves also as the NAMSA, as the Automotive Business Council, is to be a thought leader. So to provoke thought and to think, what does this mean for the industry and how do we tap into these opportunities? So perhaps just to switch things a bit around in terms of facilitating this panel, I just want to encourage the audience at the moment. If there are questions, I'll take 3 maximum, sparked by the conversation or the presentation that Mr. Diteko has said. And whilst you're still thinking of those conversations, I'll turn to come and check the hands. I just want to be able to give my panelists an opportunity to introduce some of the work that they're currently doing in the organizations, but critical to the conversation that I want my panelists to engage in is to bring it closer to home. What does this mean for the Limpopo province in terms of tapping into the opportunities that lie in the automotive industry? So we cannot ignore it, ladies and gentlemen, that we are at a very disruptive time in terms of global value chains, but particularly in this industry as well. And as we look at the global shift towards clean technology and sustainable energy, we are standing at a time where we're looking at how do we focus on electric vehicles, but also balance it with ICE manufacturing, but such that we have a gradual transition towards the success of this industry. The theme for our panel looks at driving investment for a sustainable but also future-ready automotive sector in Limpopo. My colleague has touched on the value chain. So as much as most of the time when we think of automotive, we think of downstream and a full vehicle that has been built. But we want to have the conversation to say, how do we tap into those critical mineral resources that form part of the value chain? So maybe let me just introduce my panel. I'm joined by the Director of Zero Carbon Charge, Mr. Joubert Roux. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. That's the gentleman just next to the second seat from the far left. And then there is Mzwakhe Mbata from the DTIC. Thank you so much, Mzwakhe, for making time. And then we're joined by Mr. Asanda Mzinyathi from the AIDC. They will take you into the context of what they do as an organization as well. And of course, you have listened to the presentation by my colleague, Tate Diteko from NAMSA. So maybe, Mzwakhe, let me just start with yourself. Just if I was with you in an elevator and you had 60 seconds to pitch in terms of the context for this conversation and what it means for the province, how would you pitch that in terms of what do you do as a DTIC from a policy perspective to support this particular transition?
Thank you, Program Director, and greetings to the audience and the protocol observed. Also greetings to the Premier and my Minister. It is amiss of me to speak after my boss has spoken, the Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition. However, without much ado, we have since last year released a white paper on electric vehicles. The paper broadly supports the transition from internal combustion engines towards new energy vehicles. So in that context, we wanted to create policy certainty so that we cannot be left behind by our major markets. We have done so in collaboration with the industry, together with yourself as an association. Thanks to your efforts and your inputs, we have a policy certainty. And the President, 2 weeks ago in Cape Town, has echoed the same sentiments that we are available to support the industry, both in terms of our investment incentives as well as our non-monetary incentives. We have also created within the short space of time an intervention to reduce the rebate in order to import the critical components that are not yet available since the industry is still an infant industry. So at the level of policy centered, we have already created a framework. We are simply putting together the modalities of what the National Treasury has announced as 150 tax reduction allowance. In that context, we will transition smoothly through what you call a just transition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mzwakhe. I will jump you, Mr. Joubert. I just wanted to jump to Mr. Mzinyathi. From an AIDC perspective, if you could also just an elevator pitch bringing us closer to home to say what is the AIDC currently doing and the current stance of the automotive industry, but also in supporting the transition that we are conversing about today.
All right, thank you very much. As it has been said, my name is Asana Mzinyati. I'm the head of business development at the AIDC. AIDC stands for Automotive Industry Development Center. We're based in Roslyn. And to concur with my colleagues, all protocols observed, the AIDC is a Gauteng government agent that is focusing in transforming the automotive industry. And how do we transform the automotive industry? We transform the automotive industry by giving opportunities to black industrialists. As you know, in the value chain, not a lot of black people participate in the supply of components to the OEMs. Most of the people are actually doing sub work, which will be gardening services and so forth. So what we do, we run 2 incubation centers, one at Ford and one at Nissan, where we transform engineers to be entrepreneurs, to run their own factories and supply directly into the production line. And we also own a supplier automotive park in Roslyn. We've got 160 hectares of land, of which 60 hectares have already been developed. We've got 22 factories, which we lease. The unfortunate thing is that most of the tenants there are multinationals. There are very few South African companies that are supplying to the auto space, and that is what we're busy with, to transform the automotive industry and give black people a significant role to play into the automotive space. We also have a training center where we train young people